What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a round 1 prize picks preview for the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Going to cover what to expect from Kapalua, the plantation course that is the venue for this week's event, as well as 4 of the props that I'm targeting over on prize picks to hopefully help us cash out and make some money. So not going to delay it all. Let's hop right into the golf course. And like I mentioned, Kapalua, the plantation course, and boy oh boy is it a unique one. A couple things to note here is, first off, it's a par 73. It's one of a kind, the only event on tour where you're going to see a par 73 setup, and on top of that, one of, if not the easiest course that you're going to see. Last year, the scoring average was 4.78 under par. I'll say that again, nearly 5 strokes under par, which is outrageous. You don't see scoring fests like that, on top of a relatively scoreable course. Typically, Hawaii presents some of the best conditions all year, particularly this time of year. Relatively low winds, you also have perfect temperatures, greens that are extremely receptive, and boy oh boy do the players take advantage of it. A few other things to note is it's a long course. It's a little bit over 7,500 yards, plays a little bit under that in terms of effective yardage because of some of the elevation changes. The driving accuracy is among the highest that you're going to see on all of the PGA Tour. It has the average fairway width here at just 46.6 yards, but in reality, it's closer to 55 to 60 yards on plenty of the holes. So extremely wide fairways, which leads to 80.9% of them being hit, which for a 15 fairway setup, which is what we have here. So part of the par 73 setup are the fact that there's only 3 par 3s. So there's 11 par 4s and then there's 4 par 5s on property, meaning that there's 15 fairways that you can hit. So not only do you have a high fairway percentage to begin with, but also an extra opportunity to go out there and get a fairway. So last year, the average was 12.1 fairways per round. Heading over to the greens, they're also extremely large, so very similar to the fairways, where you have 8,700 square foot greens. That leads to an extremely high green percentage, as you would imagine, at upwards of 84.4%, which with 18 greens on property is 15.2 greens per round. Now, here on Data Golf, they do include the fringe in a lot of these calculations. That's just how Data Golf decides between, a hit green or, a green that's a miss. On the PGA Tour, they don't count fringes, whereas on Data Golf, they do. So the true average is closer to 80% at this event, but still close to 15 greens on average being hit per round, which is substantially higher than what you're used to seeing on tour. You can see it's 16.1% there. Even using the conservative number, not counting fringes, it's still 12% higher than what you're used to seeing week to week out there. So definitely a little bit of a unique factor there. In terms of a skill set, because of the length, we do want bombers, but mostly we're looking for solid iron players with large greens. It's one thing to hit the surface and then 2-putt for a par, and it's another thing to get to 34, 33 under par, like you saw last year. Cam Smith won at 34 under par. John Rahm won at 33 under par. So to win this event, to get into contention, you're going to see players making 7, 8, sometimes even 9 or 10 birdies in a round, which you won't see at any other event. I mean, you might see it at a scramble, like what we saw there for the father-son event. But this is the most birdie fest of all birdie fests that we have out there. In terms of the weather, it's going to be perfect here on Thursday. So they don't have the super forecast over there in Maui, but we do have the day-by-day weather forecast. On Wednesday, it's going to be rainy all day. So that's right now over there in Maui. They're expecting to get showers from pretty much sun up to sundown over there, which is going to make greens extremely receptive. It might make the course play a little bit longer, but it's going to make the greens extremely easy to hit. You're going to be able to apply spin to the golf ball. Players are going to be throwing darts with the wedges on some of the shorter holes on property, which is going to make conditions even easier here on Thursday, especially considering that the winds are extremely low. They have 5 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds, and the wind gusts are non-existent. It's just going to be a steady, slow little breeze throughout the weekend, which in terms of playing conditions is everything that we could ask for. I mean, it could be 2 to 3 miles an hour of sustained winds, but that's not realistic for a tropical coastal golf course. I mean, if we were in the middle of the country, middle of even the island over there on Maui, we might have a chance of having those low winds, but of course we're over there on the coast. But pretty much as ideal conditions as you could possibly have on Thursday. The low winds, perfect temperatures, and the receptive greens due to the rain the day before. These players are going to absolutely nuke this place. In terms of averages, I'd expect a scoring average of right around 5 under par if it holds up to anything even remotely close to what we saw last year. In terms of your green and fairway percentages, I think they're going to be pretty consistent with what you've seen year to year, which opens up a lot of value over here on Prize Picks. So enough talking about the golf course. Let's talk about the implications when it comes to actually betting. So the first board I want to bring your attention to is the fairway board, where I'm taking the over on both Brian Harman and Matt Fitzpatrick. Now, these aren't the only props that I'm taking on the board. Again, all of those are posted on my Patreon as per usual. This will give you a good idea of the kind of players that I'm looking to go after. So Brian Harman, one of the best players in terms of driving accuracy of all of the PGA Tour. In fact, over the last 3 seasons, he's been in the top 10 of driving accuracy every single year. So the fact that he's towards the bottom of the board, now he's not at 11 fairways like some of the players like a Finau, Willie Z, Spieth, and Hideki, but he's priced around players like a Cantlay, Xander, JT that are far from accurate players. I mean, they're consistently ranking outside the top 100 in that category, where, like I said, Brian Harman is a top 10 fairway hitter. So he should be up there at 12 fairways, potentially even 12 and a half like a Colin Morikawa, which is why I'm so stoked to get to a Brian Harman here. I'll remind you, not only are they hit at an 80.9% rate around Kapalua, you also have the extra fairway in play due to only having 3 par 3s. I'll remind you of that. Also, like Matty Fitz, now he's not quite as solid of a play as a Brian Harman. I have to say that Brian Harman is like by far my favorite play on the slate, but Matty Fitz still a solid option. You know, he's going to hit a bunch of fairways. He's in the top 30% on tour when it comes to his fairway percentage. So he's not in the top 10 every year like a Brian Harman, but still, if you're looking at the average being 12.1 fairways, your Matty Fitz is going to project for 12.5, 12.6 fairways. So still healthily above the number that we're looking for there. And both of those are plays that I'm playing quite a bit, already having a bunch of cards. I'm actually maxed out here. I'll show you guys here. If I hit play Sentry, I can't even enter more lines. They already have me maxed out at $500 a day, which is, I guess, a topic of conversation for another video. I think that's a little ridiculous. Anyways, moving on from my issues, heading over to greens and regulation, I had a ton of props here. So they had Scotty at 14.5, JT, they had Morikawa there too. They had Xander at 14.5, Tom Kim at 14.5. I bet all of those. All of those were posted on my Patreon, and then within 25 minutes, they were bumped because of all the action that was coming in. And this is real simple. The average greens in 2022 were 15.2, right? So over for the 14.5 number and all those elite tier players. JT, Morikawa, Tom Kim, Scotty Scheffler are your best iron players in the world. Not just for this event, right? This is a premier event. I want to remind people out there that are maybe a little bit newer to golf. These are the best of the best players. And those are the best iron players in the world. And they have them projected less than the average last year. So that alone makes those absolute smashes. And then considering the weather, where we have low winds, it's going to be raining all day Wednesday, so we know we're going to have receptive greens. It's an absolute gold mine. So it's not a surprise that I saw him get bumped, but I still like the Patrick Cantlay and Tony Finau ones. Now, Cantlay, he's not an elite tier iron player, but still, you know, you'd project him for more than the average. He's a top 5, top 6 player in this field. And then Tony Finau, he's been on an unbelievable stretch. Now, it looks like he changed his golf swing a little bit, so he might be a little bit more dicey, but still, he's still there at 14.5 greens. And if he even plays to like half of the ability that we saw there in the fall swing, he's going to be able to cover that sort of line too. But the rest of the board, like I mentioned, not every prop that I'm taking is on here. There are plenty of other players that take it 14.5. They even had guys like Harman and Straka at 14 greens to start the day, which was also just an egregious line, something that I would have been smashing there as well. So just keep in mind that there's a lot of value there. In terms of birdies or better, the average was, I believe, 5.5 birdies there in 2022. It was a little bit less than 5. It was like 5.47 birdies. And I don't see a ton of value. Like most of the guys are at like 5.5, 6. I mean, I guess if you wanted to take a few unders, I wouldn't hate it. Like getting to 7 birdies out of 18 holes, guys, is ridiculously difficult. Even getting to 6 birdies is extremely difficult at an easy golf course. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the birdie or better board. I actually haven't bet any of them to this point. But I guess if you were going to take anything, I might consider a few unders. Like I know it's going to be really easy, guys, but 7 birdies is just a whole other equation out there, a whole other thing. And then with the strokes board, the average is going to be like 5 under par, which if you do the math there, right, is 68. It looks like it's priced appropriately. Like there's a few guys at 68.5, like a Sanjay at, you know, lean under on, but there's question marks behind all 4 of these lower tier guys, right? They're I hate to say it, even with Hideki at this point, he's in the bottom 10, probably at least 15 players in this field. So I guess I understand the projections there. It's just they aren't quite the gold mines that you have over here in fairways and greens. Like these projections are just egregiously off. I mean, even Jon Rahm at 15 fairways, you'd have to take the over on. Last year, he hit a 90.9% rate when it came to his greens regulation. 90.9, nearly 91%. He was hitting 16, 17 greens per round pretty much. And with how the conditions look there in round one, I don't think I'd bet against him doing that as well. I think he could very well go out there and do so. So those are the props I'm taking. Birdie or better matchups are never my favorite category. They're one of the more random categories out there. And these whole 15 shots, they just haven't put the best players up there. Like a Ches Reavie, he's not the longest player on tour, doesn't have the best par 5 scoring. Same thing with a Mackenzie Hughes. Now, I don't mind the under on a Seamus Power or Scott Stallings, but yet again, guys, I'm going to stick to what I expect to be the money makers out there. And to me, those are the fairway and green and regulation boards. But that is all I've got, guys. Best of luck with any of your slips that you decide to go with. Again, if you're looking for access to all of my write-ups, all of the props that I'm taking, those will be posted on my Patreon page. You also get access to the Discord, all of the DFS projections that I'm doing for golf and whatnot. And there's also an NFL tier on there too. So if you're not just playing golf props, if of course you're playing for the NFL postseason, there's a whole tier for that as well. But like I said, best of luck, boys, and I'll catch you guys next time.